So welcome to this vlog series Not in January, everyone. And my name is Ruth Ann Richards. I am the creator of The Intuition Connection, author of Reclaim Your Intuition. And for Not in January, I want to make people aware of all the conditioning and attachments we have to do things that we don't need to do. And this episode's subject is about money. And I'm delighted to say my guest today is Kath Parrington. Kath, welcome. Thanks for being here. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself, please?
Of course I can, and thank you for inviting me, Ruth. Yeah, I'm Kath. My background, I guess, is I spent 25 years working for a corporate bank, escaped that in 2016, and at that stage I was financially free, although I hadn't realised it at the time. I now spend my time helping people write simple business plans. So my business is about helping people understand that they can break the rules when it comes to writing a business plan, because that's better for their business. But yeah, I'm a lifelong investor, and as I've explained to you before, I'm one of those people who's actually proud to say I'm good with money. So I love to help people if I can.
That's brilliant. And it was me hearing you say recently I'm good with money that made me gravitate towards you and think I need this woman in my life, because I'd love to be able to say that, and I'd love more women to be able to say that. And you know, you mentioned there you were financially free, you have financial freedom. This is a time of year, I think, when people don't feel financial freedom in January. You know, in the run up to Christmas, there's Black Friday, Black November, there's money we spend at Christmas that people can put onto the credit cards, then we get into the January sales. And I think people have held back a little bit this season because of all the other costs that they have to contend with. But I think the January sales have got a big attachment for women. We feel we have to go and buy those bargains, don't we? And do you think that's an attachment from conditioning in society?
Oh, absolutely, I do. I think we are in a society that programs us without us realising that our role is to acquire as much money as possible to spend it. And there's a reason for that. If you think about it, our economic model has been going really since kind of Victorian times, so it's only 100 and so years old, but the reality is our economy depends on an ever-increasing population spending money on stuff. That's what grows the economy. So if you think about it, everything that happens to us during our lifetime, from school all the way through education into the world of work, money's thrown at us as a means to spend money, and it becomes this cycle. And if you think about it, I think social media has made it even worse, because, you know, everyone now posts their Instagram ready lifestyle. You know, it's the photos that say, oh, I'm on this beautiful Caribbean holiday with this infinity pool, and by the way, this is my gorgeous house, and this is my perfect family doing all these perfect things. So subliminally, we're being programmed to want the bigger house, the bigger car, the exotic holiday, spend money on clothes, and it's all there. And of course, when we don't have the money, then the credit's thrown at you. And it's just this society, the society that we're in, just drives us down that route.
Yeah, the equation we live with is money equals happiness, and that's not the case. You can be on a Caribbean island and still feel lonely and miserable and depressed. You can have the big house and still feel empty. So that's an interesting equation that we're dealing with, isn't it? Money equals happiness, and actually it doesn't.
And I think that's really interesting, because unless you stop and question that programming, you're likely just to follow that mindset and follow that cycle and just keep ploughing that furrow. And I think it takes something, events or circumstances sometimes, to get you to change that ingrained programming. Now, I go out and tell people that I'm unusual, because I am a lifelong planner, and I've been an unconscious investor my entire life. And it was only when I stopped and thought about it, I tried to work out where that came from. And having done some analysis around that, I've got an idea of where that came from. I was lucky. I had a very, very happy childhood with parents who spent a lot of time with me. We didn't have a lot of money, but I had an amazing, happy childhood and lots of memories. So for me, happiness is about people. It's not necessarily about money. And I think the other thing that happened to me is I was growing up in the 80s. So 1980 was the steel strike. So the steel strike happened before the miners' strike that happened late 83, 84. I grew up in Scunthorpe, which is a steel town. My dad was a steel worker, and in 1980 they went on strike. Within the next 12 months, one of the two steelworks in the town closed. half the town was unemployed. So I came from that kind of, it was never a massive risk, but in my mind, it was always something that, oh, we might lose our home. And I think that had a profound impact on me. So home was about happiness, was about family. So security became the most important driver for me. So I never got on that consumer treadmill.
Kath, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing such a personal story. You know, I had a trigger recently in that I'm with Octopus Energy, who is fabulous, and we've been doing the energy saving sessions. So you turn off lights, you know, you turn off your fridge and freezer for an hour, you do all these things, and you turn off the TV. And you know, I'm very pro environment, love Mother Nature. I was keen to do this. But what it did for me was it gave me this huge trigger that took me back to childhood about poverty, not having the heating on or not putting the heating on. We didn't have heating. You know, we had two colour gas things and they could only go on in a morning or in a night when you went to bed and when you got up. And it took me back to that feeling of kind of not having the money to pay these bills to do these things. And I had to keep saying to myself, you can pay your bills, you're supporting the climate, you're saving the energy to make sure there's plenty for everybody during the winter. And I had to I still have to repeat it to myself, because you're right, it's so ingrained, and all our viewers, you know, watching this, hopefully now are listening to us and they can find some of their triggers as well. So it's interesting that, you know, 30, 40 years later, they're still with you.
Yeah, and it is those triggers. It was only when I thought about it, because the reality was we weren't, it's not like I came from poverty. We weren't that skint at all, but it was just money was important because it was something you had to work hard for. So, you know, mum made our clothes, for example. So when I was a teenager, I'd go get material from the market and I'd make my own clothes because I could make clothes that were different to everyone else's, and that being different was kind of important to me as well. So I think some of it was finding just that I had these grounded values, that there were more important things in my life than money. But I think as a result of that, I've actually gone through my entire life acquiring money, and I think that was the security thing allied with that, it not being the most important thing in the world. And I think if you understand your triggers, then you're right, it helps you understand those behaviours. So the January sale is definitely a trigger. Black Friday, you know, buying lots and lots of presents for people, when it's fine if it's things that they want or things that they value. But I think what happens is people just spend a whole load of money on stuff that actually never really comes out of the box and ends up in a charity shop or ends up getting thrown away, which is even worse. And that kills the planet, and that can't be right.
And it doesn't help with financial freedom either.
No.
And I think, you know, women's history and ancestry is that, you know, we've not been known for having financial freedom, we've been dependent. So, you know, I think we're part of a generation that's changing the mindset for future generations about women having financial independence and financial freedom. So when it comes to this time of year, when there is kind of more debt and more costs, I love your question of it's, you know, why are you doing this? Because we've said money doesn't equal happiness. So why are you buying stuff in the January sales just because it's cheap? And, you know, I've been guilty in the past of, if I like one thing, I'll buy it in every colour. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you don't need it in every colour. You really don't. But what do you think some of the things are that we can do to kind of break with this conditioning, break with this idea that we have to buy it just because a shop's put it on sale?
Yeah, it's not easy, and I think there's a few things there for me. I think the first thing is recognizing it in the first place, realizing that what you have, you can have like that fleeting satisfaction of having acquired something, because it is that instant gratification, and recognizing that gratification doesn't last. That's not a long-term thing. It's you feel good for a little while because you're holding this thing that looks nice and feels nice, or this thing that you wanted, but then a couple of months later you're not even seeing it anymore, so it can't have been that important. And I think if you can actually discipline yourself just to walk around your home and look at every surface, look in every drawer, and try and think, when was the last time you actually touched that? Because if you touch it, then it means something. If you don't touch it, then it doesn't mean something. One of the things I encourage people to do when I'm talking about this kind of stuff is just have a look, see what's in your house, see what's in your cupboard, see what's in your drawers, and see if you can get some money back on that. Sell it on eBay, sell it on Facebook Marketplace. Take that money and do something constructive with it, as opposed to just spending it on that gratification that doesn't last. So that's one thing I encourage people to do, is just have a look, see what's lying around the house, see if you can convert that to money. I am passionate about getting people to think long term as well. It's not easy if you get to your 50s and realise you haven't got a pension, you haven't saved for it. There's things that you can do, but certainly if you're in that situation, talk to your kids, talk to your grandkids, because actually saving little bits over a long period of time builds up into something really quite significant. I don't know if you've come across a book called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy.
No.
That's personal development book, and it's about making lots of small little changes every day, improving yourself 1% each day in order to get a massive return. Now, that was actually based on the theory of compound interest, which is a financial thing. So what that is if you save small amounts and just put a little bit of interest on it, so just in a basic bank account, you don't see much difference over a few days or even a couple of years, because it's a couple of pence interest all the time, but that's all building up. And what happens is there's this like graph that goes along the line like this, and then it suddenly ticks up and goes high at the end. And that's what compounding interest does. So it works in terms of personal development, but it actually comes from financial development. So that's how interest works. So if you save a little bit over a long period of time, then it will just work for you. That money works for you, providing you don't spend it.
I love that. One of the things I've read about, I've read quite a bit around performance for sports people, and they talk about the incremental effects, which is on a parallel path with what you talk about, the compound effect. It's the incremental of these little small things that help performance. So for the British Sky cycling team, I think it must have been prior to 2012, washing your hands thoroughly and properly after going to the toilet, or before eating, after exercising, etc., reduced the chance of getting colds and infections and viruses and things. And that helped improve performance. And it's a small thing, but like you said, they were doing all these small things, and they're working on sleep hygiene. And it wasn't just stuff about being on the bike, it was stuff about their life, and all those small things added up. So it sounds very similar to that. The more small things we can do, the more we improve our life in the long term. And I think that's the hard thing with the January sales, isn't it? That marketing becomes so much more sophisticated, and it gets us. It can be harder to break that conditioning and resist that temptation, because our family expects us to live a certain way, or we're having the social media lifestyle. It's hard to resist that temptation, isn't it, with the sophistication of what we're living with.
It's really hard, and those are the messages that are delivered to us all the time through social media, through adverts, just through life generally. I mean, as soon as you start, kids in school, for example, it's about the trainers, it's about the right phone and all that kind of thing. When actually what you need is a phone that connects you to the internet. You can get your emails on, you can take photos with, you can make phone calls. You don't have to spend £1,000 on a phone. I spent a couple of £100 on a brand new phone about 2 years ago, and that will see me through for another 3 or 4 years before that dies, and then it'll physically die before I get another phone. It's about understanding what you actually need rather than what society is pushing you to do. But even if you don't buy that thing in the sale, if you just, instead of spending the £60 on that thing in the sale, just put that away in a savings account. Just put it away, and then the next time you want to buy something, instead of buying it, put that money in a savings account, because that'll start building. And before you know it, instead of buying lots of little things, you've suddenly got the money for that Caribbean holiday.
It's what you said earlier, it comes back to what makes you happy, and it comes back to personal values, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I have bought very few Christmas presents this year, very, very few. And for 2 of my nephews, aged 13 and 19, I'd asked them both what they wanted, and they said, I can't think of anything really. So I said, well, if there's nothing you really desperately want for Christmas, instead of giving you the money, can I give that money to a charity who will buy a present for a boy your age who wouldn't get one? And that's what I've done. And it was through Cash for Kids. and we looked at what the toys that were, you know, the choices that were available, and we chose 2 footballs and 2 skateboards, because then that the kids can be outside, they don't have to worry about plugging anything in and the energy bills. And we had this conversation, we were very mindful about what we were buying, and they chose them. And I've, you know, I've seen them today prior to recording this and said, oh, you know, so proud of you that we've done that. And they're fine with it. It just doesn't seem to bother them. And I think there's this idea of showing love is giving a big gift, and actually showing love is being there when someone needs you. And it's back to this values, isn't it? It's the show, it's the perception that can kind of drive us, when actually, when we think about it, what are our values? You know, you 2 boys have both got what you need. Why don't we give something to someone else? And I'll be honest, I was surprised when they both said yes, but I was incredibly pleased that they did.
And if you think about it, what you've just described there is not just about the fact that it's a really positive reflection on the boys, because of you know, the headspace that they're in, the recognition that they don't have anything that they particularly want or need, but also in coming to that conclusion, you spent time together. Spent time together having that discussion. You spent time with them, talking to them about what they actually wanted. And that's what we really want as human beings. It's those little things. It's those little things that are massive. One of the things that really stands out for me is, from a child, my mum always read this bedtime story. Now, that's not unusual, but do you know what? Our bedtime stories went on and on and on, and we kind of started off on the normal ones, and then we did like the C.S. Lewis Narnia books, and then Mum read us The Hobbit, and we enjoyed that so much. She read us the whole of The Lord of the Rings. Now, think about how long that would have taken. But you know what? That is precious memories of things. And I'm always going to remember that, because it was that time and those stories, and just disappearing into that world that meant so much more to me than anything else. You know, my childhood memories were about holidays where we were walking in the woods and talking about wildflowers, and I learned about birds, and my dad got me into history and politics and geography. So I've got a love of maps and travel, and everything that's important to me is memories, and it's to do with people. It's not when you look back at it, it's never the stuff. It's never the stuff.
No. I'd like to kind of like sum up now, if we can, because you've given our viewers some great points to think about. So, you know, the purpose of the conversation was to make ourselves and our viewers aware of all the conditioning around us that comes from, you said, education, from society, from family. You know, we're bombarded with stuff on social media and just everywhere about what we should have, what we should do. We're at the mercy of sophisticated marketing techniques. But ultimately, the first thing to do is just go within, go inside, listen to your intuition, because that's what I'm all about. Just say to yourself, what are my values? What do I really value in life? And how do those things make me feel? Because you're right, it's not the instant gratification we need, it's the longer term happiness. So I think that's the first, you know, guidance and suggestion we can give is, you know, what makes you happy? What are your values? And from your values, you can determine what you need. So if one of your values is to protect the environment or to become financially independent and financially free, that can then help drive your behaviours, and it has more meaning for you. And I love the idea of the other suggestion you had as well, which was just go around your house and touch things. And when you pick it up, you know, I've got a jelly bean jar that I bought for my mum, and I've kept it because my mum loved it and she loved jelly beans, and I don't eat them, but I can touch that jar and I can remember my mum's face when she opened it, so I keep it. And it's things like, that's what you're saying, isn't it? It's what's, you know, what does that mean for you? And now is a great time if you have people to go around the house and find the things that they can sell on eBay or donate to charity. And I loved your other suggestion as well. You know, the other thing to do is don't buy that thing in the sales if you don't need it, and instead put the money in a savings account. So some really practical tips there. Have I missed anything, Kath, that you've said? I've tried to summarise a great conversation there down to kind of like 3 suggestions, but
no, I love that, and I love the simplicity of it. I mean, I can go on for hours about how you can look at life as an investor as opposed to a spender, and it can get a lot more complicated than that. But for me, it's keep it simple. Start somewhere, you know, and I just love having conversations, just getting people to challenge that. don't get on the consumer treadmill. Don't do it. Or if you're on it, get off it. Get off it. Just stop and look and think.
And have the courage to just break with expectations and tradition. And that's what we really need to do, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Kath, if people want to find out more about investments and business planning from you, we'll put your details along with this vlog so they can get hold of you. But how do you want people to contact and connect with you?
I love connecting with people on LinkedIn, on Facebook, by email. My phone number's on LinkedIn. I'm quite easy to contact. I'm very open to conversations. Like I say, the business consultancy is very much around business planning. The investment stuff, I'm not a financial advisor, so that's about talking about my passion. It's about trying to get people to take control of their financial lives, and I just do that because I love it.
Kath, that's amazing. Thank you. And for any women watching, and even men, it is time for us to take control of our financial lives, because we deserve to have financial independence and freedom. I can't believe I've not used the A word yet, but abundance. The universe wants us to be happy and abundant. And we get lost with that, don't we? But Kath, any final words you'd like to say to our viewers before we close?
I would just say have a fantastic 2023 and take the opportunity to do something different this year.
Kath, that is beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.